Here we are, and it is live talk with Becky Chernek. And boy, let me tell you, do I have a superstar waiting for you, everyone. I'm glad you're here with Erikka Wells. So before we go ahead and get started with Miss Erikka Wells, first of all, I do want to tell y'all, it has taken me, I got to say, forever to figure out Miss Erikka Wells' schedule. She's so busy to get her on here to the live talk with Becky Chernek. So I'm so glad I was able to pull it off and finally said, Erikka, get in here. I got to have you on, man. So this is so cool. I am major excited about it. And so, guys, before we get started, again, for those that I can't even imagine not knowing what Becky Chernek does, and my services that I offer car dealers throughout the USA and Canada. And I'm sure my Canada folks are on here as well. And so I offer the very best in finance and insurance training and then some. So, you say F&I training, but what does that mean? So I start from the time that customer touches down on that dealership website, from BDC, what is that conversation all about? Because that's so important. From from the time the customer comes into the dealership, meet and greet with a salesperson, to desking. Now I know desking. Okay, I've been in dealerships. I've worked in run dealerships, and how important is that hub, right? And Erikka, I know you are running that store, and so you can quite understand where I'm going with this whole thing. So from there to, finalizing this transaction in the F&I office, now get this, single point sales associate or, so either a single point sales associate or hybrid or even obviously our traditional F&I manager. So here we are, and welcome everyone, Erikka Wells. Great to have you.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here, Becky. And I can assure you, the timing was perfect. I was so excited about coming on, and I'm so glad our schedules were able to meet and match. And I was able to join you today. So thank you for not losing sight of keep coming after me, because I definitely wanted to be here.
So what's that tell you, everyone? So just because you get a no or maybe or this or that, you just keep at it. You just don't take no for an answer. And I finally said, Erikka, I'm calling Erikka, and I'm getting Erikka on the phone. I am going to close this. It is going to happen. And I didn't, hey, when you don't take no for an answer, see what happens? I get the best. I get the best coming on Live Talk with Becky Chernek. So let's talk about your background. Let's talk about who Erikka Wells is, because I've been telling everyone you're the superstar. You are, and you're the up and coming automotive legend. That's who you are.
Well, thank you, Becky. You're too kind and very gracious. I started in the car business in 2004. My background was a daycare teacher. I had, no intention of originally coming into the automotive. I fell into it. I was a high school dropout. I got pregnant at 18. I got my GED, and I was sitting there figuring out what was I going to do next. I have this young baby I'm trying to raise. I can't afford to put her in daycare. I don't have reliable transportation to get to work. And I finally decided the easiest thing to do was to work at the daycare so I could bring her to work with me and not have to pay. So I was making $6 an hour, and then my car broke down. And I don't think people really understood how important transportation is, especially when you're a young mom and you're just trying to figure things out. Getting back and forth to work is your livelihood. So I ran into a guy that worked at the local Midas. We worked out a deal where he was going to help me get my car fixed. I was going to bring some of the families from the daycare to his shop. And 2 years later, he came to the daycare and said, I want to hire you to be a service advisor at my store. I knew nothing about cars, absolutely nothing. All I knew was that I was getting paid $6 an hour and he was offering $8 an hour. So I jumped right in. I was at a Napa Auto Care Center. It was a 3-service bay shop. I ordered all the parts. I handled all the customers. He took me back inside the shop and had me bleeding brakes with him sometimes. I had to learn all the aspects of it from a hands-on, personal, independent repair shop. And it was interesting because I started to see how I was influencing families that were coming in with auto repair problems just like mine 2 years before that. And I was able to help them get that fixed. And I started to feed off that support system to be able to help support families and change their lives. From there, I went and got my dealer license in Georgia. We started buying cars at the auction, and then we would flip them, get them fixed, and then sell them at the repair shop on Craigslist. So you know how long ago that was.
Yeah.
I went and ended up working at a used car repair, used car buy here, pay here. And then I got into auto retail, went to a new car franchise. That was 7 years with Audi. And here I am, almost 20 years now in the automotive industry and just continuing to grow and tell my story and bring more women specifically into automotive because I think they have a place here.
Well, I tell you, time goes by fast when we're in the automotive industry, isn't it? It's amazing. I thought about that the other day when I uploaded a photo from me that was taken of me and my husband when I was attending a JMA function, an award celebration dinner, and gosh, that was 1999. So, so I get, there's, the drive and what it takes to make it. And I can tell you how many times people have told me in the past, no, Becky, it's not going to work. No, Becky, you're a female. It's just not going to happen. You're just not going to be successful. Oh, by the way, Beck, women don't sell cars. Oh, by the way, Beck, menu selling is not going to happen. That's not going to take off. You might as well go back in the box and start closing customers down again because not happening. So the thing is that who would have ever guessed in my career too, working with the AutoNation stores back in the day with Wayne Huizinga, when he first opened those mega stores, did I realize that was going to pave my career for 20 years? Never in my wildest imagination. And now here's the other thing that's and I'm sure you can appreciate this, but I remember when someone said to me, or if someone actually would have said to me, which someone said to me in the past, Becky, you're going to get up and you're going to do presentations and in front of people. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't do that. I know what I'm good at, and F&I, I'm great at. I don't get up there and do any sorts of presentations. So here's the thing. Go figure, never in my wildest imagination did I think that I would ever be a finance and insurance consultant trainer throughout the USA and Canada. Never. It just, I would have said, you are on, I don't know what, but not happening to me. And I see a lot of, you're going places, Erikka. So let's talk about the fact that you are the vice president, women of color in Automotive Network. Talk to us about what do y'all do? What are you doing with that whole thing?
So we started WOCAN. It's a nonprofit in 2020, right after George Floyd's murder. We realized there was a lot of conversations that needed to be happening in the dealership about race, about the disparity and the biases between women and women of color, men of color, specifically in automotive. And it was myself, Carrie Wise, Amanda Gordon, and Patrice Banks. We were already friends in automotive, and we talked to each other, we're mentors to each other, but we decided that we needed to do something bigger. And that if we were having conversations where we were saying, hey, I'm the only one. I'm the only one in my dealership. I'm the only one in my organization that looks like me. What are we going to do to draw more women of color into the automotive industry? And there was already organizations for women specifically. We really wanted to focus and hyper focus on women of color and the low percentages of women in the business. So we came together, we started a nonprofit. It's all about empowering women, connecting women, attracting women of color, bringing them in to make sure that they're in management and leadership positions, making sure they have scholarship opportunities to go to school, whether it's finance school, whether it's management, leadership opportunities. A lot of times it comes to affordability, being able to have access to these workshops and go to conferences. They're expensive. A lot of these women work in positions where they're at the front desk or they're at the receptionist, and they don't see a career path for themselves. And more importantly, they don't see leaders in the industry that look like them, that make them say it is possible. I absolutely can be a manager, a general manager, an owner. And so it's been amazing. We have over 500 members to date. We also have an ally program, which is our people who are not women of color. So basically, if you're not a woman of color, you come into our membership as an ally because we need your support too. It's so important to have those who work in the dealership understand the differences, the biases that happen, and then work to overcome those. And that's how we work together as a unit to make it happen. So we're super excited. We have a big event coming up in October. We have some scholarships that we're announcing next month in August. And it's actually our 2-year anniversary in August of 2022.
Well, congratulations. And I told you I want to be a part of it somehow, some way. And so we have some comments coming in. I just wanted to say hello to everyone. Ben Gay, he's everywhere. He touches LinkedIn, he touches Facebook, he's all over the place. Ben Gay, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being here tonight with us. And Sandy Parks, I got to tell you, this Sandy Parks, she is she has been in the industry a very long time, and I convinced Sandy to get on with menu. She didn't want nothing to do. I'm just telling you the truth. She want nothing to do with it, and I convinced her. In fact, the the funny thing was that Sandy used to send me all her F&I people. She was the F&I director at this large Toyota store. So she'd send me all her F&I people. And I'm like, well, where are you, Sandy? I'm not doing that crazy stuff. I'm just not going to do it. And I said, finally, one day I convinced her, and I'm like, you've got to do this. And she does. And so I convinced her why it was so important that menu selling definitely works. So anyway, so she's a super cool person. And then we've got Miss Julie Cook. Women are stronger forever together. I agree with that. Yes.
Absolutely. Becky, a lot of times those of us that found ourselves in automotive kept thinking it was going to be a stepping stone. We came into automotive with the mindset that I'm just going to do this until I find a real job, whether it was at the receptionist, the front desk, or doing admin, being in the BDC, answering phone calls. And we want women to understand that it's a career. It is a real job. There is nothing to be embarrassed about. There is nothing to be ashamed about. Being in the automotive industry is a lucrative opportunity, is a place where you can have personal development. Liza Borges said it best the other day on Facebook. She says, we were considered essential when the pandemic hit. You know how big that is? We were organizations that when everything else shut down, they said automotive needs to stay open along with the hospitals, right? So when
Yes.
you consider yourself an essential business, and we were able to keep our employees employed, we were able to keep our staff on the books, we were able to have and help customers who needed us in times when things were dire, that's a big deal. And it's important that we change the stigma and stereotype around automotive so that we can bring more people in this industry who don't look at it as a stepping stone, but look at it as a career field that they can be in.
No, I think what it is too is making sure that, we have a game plan in place. What is the reason for coming on board? Making sure that not only are we, attracting really good talent, what is that talent? Defining what that talent is. I don't care who they are. One of the benefits of, I got to say, I've worked with some really cool dealers. I really have. I know some of these guys are like waiting. They want me to say, hey, by the way, these guys were bunches of, and there, don't get me wrong, there was plenty of that going on. But I have worked for dealers and who have given me incredible opportunities in their stores to take advantage of. And I did. Don't get me wrong. But I was the one that had the blinders on, and I'm taking it come heck or high water, and I was going to make it happen no matter what. And but I got to say, though, that not only do we need to attract what that talent is, we got to do a better job with that. And we have to do a better job with training. We just do, and giving them the roadmap for success.
You're absolutely right. We just talked about this the other day about personal development and making sure that people have jobs that they feel are fulfilling. It's one thing to be able to make money. It's the other thing to make yourself feel like you're making a difference, that you're having an impact, that you're growing. A lot of times managers don't get training. You think about the F&I part, right, where your background is from. You have F&I people, then you have the product specialists who come in and make sure that they're selling enough product, that their numbers make sense, that their PVR is in line, that their products per deal. Like, we're looking at those numbers, we're coaching, we're training on a regular basis. Then you take a department like the service drive and it's neglected. Those service advisors rarely get training outside of the OEM training. Who's coming in and asking them, what are they doing better? Listening to them, coaching them, giving them word tracks. And then when you think about the variable side with sales, what about the managers? Who is training the managers? How do you get to GSM? How do you get to GM? If that's something that's on your radar, where are you getting the coaching and development without going to NADA school, which is extremely expensive? if you don't have the scholarship, or if you don't know somebody, those opportunities are not out there for everyone. So to your point, Becky, the personal development is a lot of times why people leave an industry or they leave a job is because they don't feel like they're growing. They don't feel like they're being challenged, and they don't feel like, to your point, that there's a roadmap that says in 3 years, 5 years, 3 months, 6 months, here's where I can see myself and here's what I'm doing to get there.
Right. And so you have this attracting, training, retaining piece. What is that? What is the plan? And this is where they fall short. We all fall well, not everyone falls short, but if in fact, what are new ways, what are better ways to attract this talent? Getting into the schools, education, recruiting from the government. I mean, those that are coming back into civilization, I call it. But yeah, but thinking outside the box to educate these talented folks that, from understanding that there is a viable opportunity here in the car business. I know it, you know it. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have the opportunity as much as that I have had over the years, had it not have been for dealers who embrace or giving me this opportunity to be successful. I just had to take the initiative and make it happen. So a couple things. Sandy Parks, she did come in. She did say, I hated the menu and you converted me for sure. Told you. I sure did. And then Michael, I don't know if you know Michael Dean Offman. What a great guy he is. He's another fantastic, fabulous F&I trainer, and I follow him wherever he goes. So Erikka, we were also talking about, many times, there comes a message or a text from Stephen Apicella. Do you know who Stephen Apicella is?
I don't.
You don't?
Tell me.
What a treat. He really is. He's a terrific person. He has his white, am I saying that correct, Stephen? I'm going to butcher it. I don't mean to, but he has a phenomenal technology that gets products in front of the customer before, during, and after. YDE, I think YDE, right? And DX strategies. So let's talk about this, Stephen Apicella. For those who contribute their talent and voice to our industry, men, women, and whatever identity, are stronger together to help our great industry. Inclusivity, for everyone is necessary for our industry to continuously evolve. No barriers or division should exist, including pay, age, or gender discrimination. It's all of our responsibilities to remove the obstacles that limit that word I can say, our collective potential. What do you think about that?
Oh, Stephen is absolutely right. He's hitting the nail on the head. I think what made the automotive industry attractive is, especially when you think about the sales floor specifically, anyone can come on the sales floor and sell cars, right? That is one place where your potential to sell as many cars as you want is really up to you. And he's right. Getting those barriers out of the way so that you can continue to grow is the key. Because a lot of times it's the entry-level positions that are open. If you want to be in the detail department, there's a lot of positions available. If you want to be in the call center, there's usually a lot of, positions available. They basically at some point said with sales, as long as you're breathing, you could come sell cars, right? Can you follow the mirror? Right? Now, let's talk about professional development and elevation. A lot of times we coach people and we manage people and we mentor people who look like us, who remind us of us, right? It's like a family member, a brother or sister, a niece or nephew, someone that they say, man, this person just reminds me of me when I was young. But if you don't feel that connection to someone, sometimes we have those biases against people and say, I don't know if they're going to be a good fit. And we allow things that we may know about them personally to cloud our judgment on whether they would make it in this business. And I laugh a lot of times as I meet people and they'll say, well, Erikka, how can we hire people like you? And I say, absolutely. But will you go back 20 years ago when I was a dropout with a GED, working at a daycare with no previous experience, who only had Burger King on my resume before that? Would you have hired her? And
Amen.
And if you would have thrown my resume to the side for someone else more experienced, then I would have never had the opportunity I have today. So when I'm looking at candidates, I'm looking for, are they hungry? Are they coachable? Are they trainable? Those are core values. Are they honest? Everything else I can teach. Everything else I can coach. But I'm really looking for who they are as a person and do they want to grow, because that's who I was. And to Stephen's point, the more we do that, the more we diversify the industry with people who don't think like us, then the faster we'll grow, the more competitive our industry will be, and the entire industry together can be uplifted.
Amen. Amen. I absolutely agree with that. So like I worked with a large automotive group, and I'll tell you, I liked their the their culture, in that they they didn't have these hangups as far as who they promoted, who they hired and put into F&I. So I worked with a lot of, actually, which is different, worked with a lot of females from all sorts of industries, and also restaurant, accounting, BDC, banks, who had no previous car sales experience. And I can say how many dealers I've talked to over the years who felt, I need to promote someone, Becky, that's been in the car business, that sold cars. And I'm like, I get it. I understand, because you want to make sure, once you get into that position, you have empathy, understanding as to what takes place when you're selling a car. There's a lot of long hours. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of time where you're out in the hot sun or in the cold weather. There's a lot of things that take place to sell that car. So
Absolutely.
I think it's important to have that empathy and understanding, but I don't necessarily believe that by having that necessarily makes it, um, it necessarily makes it you have to hire you promote from that alone.
Well, you can offer job shadowing, right? So you bring someone in and you allow them to spend time in certain departments. I think that's important for every person that comes in. Spend a little time in service. Spend a little time in finance. One of the biggest obstacles between the salespeople and finance is they don't understand the whys behind things, right? Get 2 phone numbers, get 2 years of address, and they just think that the finance manager is just giving them a hard time. But later, when you spend time in the F&I office and you're going through that paper and you're trying to submit it to the bank and they're like watching this stuff and say, listen, I can't even move forward on this application without you doing your part. There becomes a natural empathy because now I understand from a different point of view, a different lens. And we're not often given those lenses. So the environment in the dealership ends up becoming silos of people who don't have an understanding of the other person's job, who don't get what it's like to maybe be in detail with no AC in the heat, sweating, summertime, and you're just sitting up here saying you're 20 minutes late. My car should have been ready for delivery. Where does that empathy come from? I don't have to necessarily work in detail for 6 months to have an understanding that this person has a valuable job to what I do and that their work matters. And that even just spending a day in that department, understanding what they do on a day-to-day basis can give me a level of understanding and empathy, to your point, that allows me to have a better relationship with them because I can understand that, hey, you have a tough job, even if it's different than mine.
Well, I got to tell you, yes. So we didn't necessarily, and maybe we did for a bit, shadow F&I people, but we ended up putting these gals in the F&I department. And I got to tell you, they did really well. They far exceeded everyone's expectation, and it was through training, and I give the dealer a tremendous amount of credit for taking the chance, giving others the opportunity to grow, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's not taking someone like
dealerships I was at. I wanted to go to F&I school. I was on the desk as a sales manager at the time, and they kept saying it's too expensive. You don't need it. You're already on the desk. Typically, people go to finance and then the desk. But I didn't realize until later after I went to F&I school how much I made mistakes. How many of my deals were set up wrong, that my finance managers were probably pulling their hair out when they got my deal. Like, are you kidding me? What was she thinking? It's a
Oh my God, yes.
4 months and she just wanted to get to the payment, right? I didn't understand the deal structure. So I came to my dealer and said I wanted to go to school and they wouldn't send me. I literally, Becky, had to go pay for school myself. I ended up going to the College of Automotive. It's the only school I could find online.
Mm-hmm.
It was $8,000 tuition and they allowed you to make monthly payments over 12 months.
That's right.
$285 a month for 12 months. It was self-paced. And that's how I got my finance training. It wasn't until 2 years later that they were like, okay, fine, we're going to send you to JM&A school. But to your point, these are those obstacles that come in the way of people who naturally want to grow and who say, listen, if you're not going to provide the resources, I'm going to go out there and find them myself because I want to be better, right? It's not because you may feel I don't need it. I want to be better.
Well, right. So I think that's the culture. That is the type of individual, quality of individual that dealers really want to hire. They want long-term players. I would think that they understand that turnover is not a good thing, that the more that we can have that culture where they know that there is opportunity for promotion. And there is that roadmap that if in the event, you have a better understanding that there is specific training that the dealership has in place. I know dealers who have universities. And I think that is just exceptional.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to look at. So speaking of which, you and I also had another type of conversation. And I just thought, wow, never even thought of it this way. So as we get to grow our teams and we want everyone to work in unison, because that's something that I sure do. When I go into a store, I want all the managers to be on the same page. I want everyone to work in unison. It just makes sense, right? Because when we are, we're maximizing sales and profits, and it's always a good thing. So they all utilize, or not all, but a lot of dealers will talk about this is a family. We're coming together here. We're working as a family together. And so you say, well, you know what? I don't know whether or not that's a good thing to be a family unit in a dealership environment. And I would think that there are dealers that are going to be watching this. If they're not on tonight, they're going to be watching this. And they're going to go, well, wait a second. We always felt that it is about family because frankly, you're seeing your team members probably more so than you see your family members. So it is about family. It is about growing. It is about sharing and experiencing together. What do you say?
Well, I would agree. And for a long time, I felt that same way, Becky, that it is about family. We're in an environment where we're growing, we're trying to develop each other. It feels like our managers are our mom and dad, like our coworkers are our brothers and sisters. But then I started thinking about not being able to draw that line anymore. And that balance starts to merge. And that used to be black and white becomes very gray. And some of the toxicity that sometimes happens in these dealership environments where that family environment goes too far. And I'll bring a couple examples to the table. When you think about family, there is a loyalty to family that would not necessarily happen in a work environment, right? One thing we don't do is we don't tattle on family, right? There's certain secrets that we keep in the family that are just in the family and no one talks about them, right? We don't talk about uncle who has an alcohol problem. We don't talk about our cousin who's going through her second bankruptcy. We just get to the family reunion and we get to the barbecue and we all kind of turn our head and act like that's not happening. But when you think about a work environment and you think about that type of culture, there are certain things that have to be brought to the forefront. And I'm not just talking about certain things that are happening with employees as individuals, like whether they have a drug problem or an alcohol problem or they're dealing with marital stuff. But a lot of times what ends up happening is we do talk about those things at work. And there becomes this openness, that sharing things that become private and personal and everything's blurred. And when you need time off, now there's this micromanagement and people are asking you questions about, well, where are you going? What are you doing with your time off? Well, you're sick. Well, what's going on? What kind of surgery are you having? Right now, things are, you feel obligated because this is your family to tell things that you wouldn't necessarily tell. I was sharing one example with you, Becky, where this is more of a personal one where my boss had asked me to come in and take over the stores. The general manager, he said, I'm going to be out of town. The GSM is going to be out of town, and we're depending on you to be there. And I said, yes, I'm going to do it. We're leaning on you, Erikka. And we just, this is a big responsibility to be the first time you ran the store by yourself. Now, it was weeks and weeks ahead of time that they gave me this, but it was right during the pandemic. And my daughter, who was graduating from high school, finally got the date of the makeup day that they were going to do the graduation. And it was the same day that they were going to be out of town. And Becky, when I tell you that I struggled with making a decision between my work family and my personal family, because I felt so loyal to them and they were depending on me and they were leaning on me. And this was my opportunity to shine. And this was my opportunity to show them that I could run the store. I was going to have the keys and no one else was going to be there to open it. They had given me that responsibility. And now, granted, they didn't know that it was my daughter's graduation. That came after. But I didn't feel right asking. I felt obligated to be there. And I told my daughter no. And I watched her on Zoom during the pandemic get her high school graduation via Zoom call because I didn't want to tell them no. And it was a very tough decision for me. And it made me realize that I had put my loyalty as a family so far invested into the dealership that I no longer realized the difference between work and family, real family, blood family. Because if I had told my GM that I was going to miss my graduation, there's no way he was going to let me go. But I didn't even feel right telling him because that line had gotten too blurry where I didn't want to let anybody else down. I felt like they were both family. And in the moment, it made sense to me. It felt clear that I was supposed to choose my job because that's how I was going to support my daughter. And I justified it that way. And I soon began to look at things a little bit differently when we talk about the work and the family and how we may need to keep those separate. Instead of a work family, it should be a tribe. It should be a team, more like sports analogies, right? Being there for each other, depending on each other, having each other's back. But when something's wrong, you're going to call each other out. And when someone needs to go home and take care of their family because they're having a baby or have parents that are sick, you're going to tell them, get out of here. We got this. You go take care of what you need to take care of. In families, the loyalty is a little bit different. We're supposed to self-sacrifice. We're supposed to put other people's needs before our own. And when you don't have a clear separation of work and home, then you get those blurry lines where you may not make the right choice.
Well, I just was fascinated about that whole analogy of how you see it between the family versus the tribe versus a team. And you're right. I just never thought of it quite that way. But also because you're going to go ahead and make a decision probably for the family before your own blood. And I can tell you over the years how often I did the same thing. I have. And I overlooked a lot of the time that I could have spent with, my family. And I thought, well, I'm really beholden to this family.
Yep.
I get it. I could feel it. I remember. And those are moments, like you said, what you can't get back. That's not something you're getting back.
No. And think about the feedback you give family versus the feedback you give your employees. You don't put family through a personal improvement plan. You don't write them up. You don't fire family, right? Family has this innate notion that it's forever. We're just going to be there forever, right? Like this family, you're going to be there forever. Well, the employment life is not like that. There is an endpoint usually at some time. And for you to grow, it's necessary to have improvement plans. It's necessary to have feedback where someone tells you, hey, this is something you need to work on. This is a place you need to grow. We noticed that you've been coming in late. We noticed that you've been leaving early. We're noticing that you're having a hard time meeting your numbers. What can we do to help you? In families, it's not necessarily like that, right? We let a lot of stuff go under the rug. We let it up. That's just the way Johnny is. He's always going to be that way. His dad was like that. That's how he is, right? It's
amen. Oh, sure.
But you can't give people those same, exceptions at work in a sense that you're not helping them grow. If you let them be late every day, if you let them not come in on time, if you let them just, take advantage of the environment. You're creating a culture within the dealership that other people look at and say, well, how are you going to hold me accountable when you don't hold that person? Well, that person's like a son to me. They've been here forever. They have a good heart. They're a good guy. All that means nothing to the bottom line of giving them direction and clear understanding of what our job expectations are and that you need to meet them. And again, that's why that tattling and you ratting on someone and snitches get stitches. Like, you don't tell certain things because this is our work family. You don't let them know what's going on, and then people make bad decisions. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they do things in honor of, I'm trying to be loyal to my manager. My manager asked me to do something I probably knew wasn't the right thing to do, but because I respect them as a mentor and a friend and a family member, I'm willing to do this and put my job on the line. I mean, people have done jail time, and this in the finance side. Unethical things because someone pushed them.
Amen. So I've had this conversation today in some form or the other, maybe text form, but that's why I say that. But I was talking about some of what's happening with FTC, and I don't know if these proposals are going to come through, what's going to happen with that whole thing or not. And, a lot of, and let's face it, there are dealers that have big pockets. Can I just say that? And they just do. And, if there's a fine, a couple million or more, maybe for some bigger dealers than others, they're going to pay it and not even blink an eye, maybe. It's a cost of doing business. But I have seen, and I have seen where other employees of the dealership, they're paying for it. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who are standing in front of that judge. They're the ones that are going to jail because of the dumb stuff that they're doing, because it's that hoodwink. Mm-hmm. It's part of the family. It's what we do. It's how we do it. Whether or not people want to agree with me or not, I've been in the business way too long. I've seen it. I know what happens. It is what it is. And I'll never forget, it haunts me in a way, for Terry O'Loughlin. I don't know if you know who he is. Terry O'Loughlin is or was the state attorney or assistant state attorney for Florida. And I got a chance to meet him, oh my God, years ago. He is now ahead of Reynolds and Reynolds. He handles the law stuff for Reynolds and Reynolds. He heads that up. Great guy. Well, come to find out, he was the one who indicted a F&I manager for confusing the elderly customer to thinking that they were financing a car when they were actually leasing it. So we had a video of him appearing in front of a judge. And I'm going to tell you, how do you think this F&I manager, what do you think he looked like in front of that judge? It was horrific. He knew he was going down. Mm-hmm. He's spending time in prison. And it just, if that doesn't wake you up, nothing will. And it's like, okay, well, maybe the dealer didn't. He paid some fines. He paid enough fines to keep himself out of jail, not the other guy. He had 7 years. So the thing is that a lot of time you're doing things, or that individual in the dealership is doing things because they think that they're a part of this family. We're a team, not a team. We're a family. It's okay. I'll take, and little do they realize, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, I was saying it's an exaggerated sense of loyalty, that you're going to have my back, right? If something goes down, we all go down. But how toxic is that? When the ripple effect and domino effect of one person's bad decision and everybody continuing to make the decision that same way, because this is how we do it here. We sign the other customers' signatures, or, we punch cards that we don't have here. I mean, all the things that dealers know better to do. And on a smaller level and a bigger level, when people have a culture and environment where everyone else does it and it feels like family, then nobody wants to tell. Nobody wants to be the person to go to HR or the GM or the owner. And maybe the owners are oblivious. Maybe the general manager is even oblivious to some of the stuff going on. But you feel like my voice no one's going to listen to me. I'm just the receptionist or I'm just a salesperson. And if I disrupt it, what are they going to say? Why did you tell? Now you're the outster, right? Now you're kicked out the family. You're blacklisted. You're the black sheep. Now you got to go find a job somewhere else because you thought you were doing the right thing. But when healthy cultures and healthy environments where you do have a clear balance and people say do the right thing because it's the right thing, that our ethics, our morals, our mission statement, and our values are always number one. And that we're all here to protect the dealership. And by protecting the dealership, we protect all the employees.
And I think that's, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that there are times that dealers don't really know what's going on. I feel like, they're very busy. They've got a lot of things going on all at once. I mean, there's just a tremendous, it's not they're all playing golf. I mean, right? You can't all be playing golf. but so yeah, there's a lot of things happening and so they're not able to be so hands-on to see what's happening every day. And that's a valid point. And so, yeah. So meanwhile, everyone's kind of thinking, hey, we're a family. We're going to take care of one another. We're going to hide one thing or another. And that's where the problems come into play as well.
Sure. And let's say it's not a problem. Let's say the family culture is more about the loyalty to the dealership and how do you avoid burnout. There's this part of us that has a loyalty to our employer to keep coming in and staying late and getting there early, especially in finance. Those hours can be brutal. I can't remember the days that I would sit in the finance office after hours or I'd come in on a Sunday and I'd be billing out my deals because I wanted everything clean the next morning. I wanted to make sure my deals were in the accounting office. I didn't want to have the stack and be embarrassed when somebody walked in and I can't even take another deal because I got 6 or 7 deals in there that I need to clean up, right? So now that's good. People say, well, Erikka, that's good. That's the kind of people you want. They go above and beyond. But then it becomes at what expense? Because if I don't have a healthy relationship to where I can say, you know what, at some point, this work is going to be here. I have to cut it off. I need to take time for my family. I need to take time for myself. And that whether the deals get in, as long as they get in before noon on Monday, I can get this done. Because I take my Sunday and I come to work and I give myself because I think that this is a family. I got to be here. They're depending on me. They're loyal. I got to give everything I have. And then you get burned out and then you're frustrated. Now you want to get out of the industry because you feel like they're putting all this pressure on you when a lot of times the pressure is self-imposed. No one asked you to come in early. No one asked you to stay late. No one said come in on a Sunday. But again, it's this weird loyalty thing and this pushing yourself above and beyond the limit when you don't know when to say no. And I think it's healthy to be able to say no. I think it's healthy to be able to say, I have too much on my plate. I can't take anything else.
So what would you tell? Because, it reminded me, this conversation reminds me of, I'll never forget it. We had this really most talented F&I person. Gosh, he was great. He was phenomenal. And wouldn't you know it, the F&I director, like you said, not the dealer, but the F&I director was the one who told him, don't worry about it. Family here. We need to get this deal into accounting. And we don't have time. We just don't have time. I need for that deal to get put together to put that deal in accounting. So what did that mean? So what exactly does that mean? It's all about family. So the next thing you know, that deal gets in accounting. It's 2-3 days later. Nobody knows. It's a busy store. Customer happens to come in. What does the customer want?
Copies.
Yeah, I mean, right? How ironic. And so they're looking at the contract and they realize that this contract was signed by somebody else. What is the chances? When it happens? Who got let go? Jeff.
Not the finance director.
No. He didn't do it. I didn't tell him to do that. I just told him to get it done. So you're right. So what do you tell dealers when it comes to, maybe defining the term family instead of let's talk team, let's talk tribe? Now, I've got a couple comments here from JB Floyd. getting the right people in the right jobs is the first thing that you have to do, then getting them united in a ethical, legal, and challenging environment, and then pay for that performance. I would bonus the cashiers, the service techs, and sales, and everyone. What do you think about all that?
JB Floyd is right on. Ethical, legal, and challenging. When the idea is that we want to do it the right way because it's the right way, then everybody's on the same page. Nobody's going to do the gray area because they know that that's not acceptable here, which means that to find the workaround means that if we have to, I have met a customer in Costco to get a signature, right? I've gotten
I've been there.
with them. She's like, Erikka, I'm busy. I don't have time. What do I need to do? I will meet you at the grocery store to get a signature. But my employers had such a high level of expectation for doing things ethical that it was always known that I want you to do the right thing all the time, anytime it makes sense. And if you feel like you can't, come see us so we can figure out a solution together. That kind of empowerment makes it so that you don't feel like you have to cross the line, that you don't have to live in the gray area, because the gray area starts off small and then it gets a little bigger and then a little bigger. And then the area between gray and white and black becomes so blurred, you don't even know what's right or wrong anymore because you've always done it this way. And it's not until someone's going to jail or someone's getting fined or someone's getting caught up that they were all going saying, I've done that before. I didn't realize it was wrong, because it's become normal. What was only a one-off thing years ago has now become the norm because we've all accepted it. So JB is right on there. Pay for performance, pay people to do the right thing, and they will do the right thing.
It's interesting. So I have a webinar I've been invited to participate in with Dealers Edge. And part of that conversation is about these F&I pay plans and how some of these F&I pay plans are changing up to be more driven towards a process behavior, which is interesting. And I understand it. I don't know that many that are putting that in place, but I like the idea behind it. What are your thoughts there?
Hey, if you want people to do the right behaviors, then the pay should reflect the right behaviors. We're right now in a time when there's no inventory. And I remember my GM came to me at my previous store and he said, write up these 3 salespeople because they didn't hit their target. And I looked at him and I said, are you serious? He's like, absolutely. It's an 8-car minimum. I said, we have 12 cars on the ground with 15 salespeople. Like, there's no way they were ever going to meet their minimum. We know that. Right? So we know the cars aren't used, and you didn't even think about it. I mean, we just got so used to writing people up because they didn't hit their number. To him, when he looked at the board and saw 6 cars, they were cars short, so write them up. And that's that kind of illicit behavior of just rinse and repeat versus taking our time and saying we're in a different time in our industry than we've been in since 08, 09 recession, right? We're in an industry time where we have to look at things different and change the pay plans for what we want. So what we need to do is acquire cars. So we need a bonus our salespeople to acquire cars from the service drive. One thing we were doing, we were charging our salespeople for referrals. And I said, so wait, you telling me this? A salesperson gets a referral into the dealership that they got through word of mouth or a friend or someone, and we're going to make the salesperson pay out of their paycheck for that referral when there was no marketing expense required. The dealership didn't pay anything to get them. And this person is coming off the word of mouth or the referral from the salesperson because of their sales skills. But we're charging the salesperson $50 or $100 to the deal because you referred someone in. Now they don't even want to tell you about their referrals because it costs them money.
So a lot of times, my frustration is that, especially when I'm talking to dealers about taking their traditional workflow, and I guess where Carrie Weiss and me just kind of like merge. I mean, to me, it requires some critical thinking. Why do we continue to keep doing what we've always done when we have this technology that can streamline this process, reduce the friction, the time that it takes to buy a car, make the whole process more efficient, digitalize the entire workflow? But you want to know why it's not happening? And it can happen. It's already been proven to happen. I've talked to Dory Musey, F&I manager at Germain Toyota, Naples, Florida, Brian Kramer, and I know you know who Brian Kramer is. He's a freaking amazing. And I know it can happen. I know it was tough. I know they had to roll up their sleeves. It's called critical thinking. You got to think through it. it took him 3 years to get there. And that's what we have to do now. We have to say, okay, we're in a different environment. How do we treat this? What do we need to do to help the people in this environment to sell cars and to make a living? So you're in a tough situation.
To your point, Becky, it's fear-based management and leadership. Where they're afraid of doing things different because, especially when it's profitable and they're making money, why will we change it?
Amen.
Right? Why don't we change what's working? And there's no thought that it could ever be better, which is often why there's industry disruptors who come from outside of an industry to make that industry better. If you looked at 10 or 15 years ago, the idea of getting in a car with a stranger would have been something we would have never thought of. Now Uber is nothing. We get in cars with strangers all the time.
That's true.
Having groceries delivered.
I was just trying to think.
How silly that sounds. You're going to have groceries delivered to your house by somebody else, and they're going to pick out your fruit and vegetables.
I know.
Now you do it with the click of a button. And it's usually not the industry inside the grocery industry or the car industry that did it. It was other people. It was inventors. There's people with big mindsets that hated the friction and said, how can I make this an easier experience for me as a consumer? And then they come inside the industry and turn it around. So let's not let that happen. Let's do it ourselves. Let's take the bull by the horn and be progressive and bring these great minds together to make it better.
So Stephen, which you'll get to know. I mean, this guy, he is absolutely, Derek, Derek just mentioned from Facebook. We've got him Facebook, and we've got everyone coming in, hopefully from Facebook and LinkedIn. And Derek says, good stuff there. It is good stuff, and it's real. And it doesn't get any more real than this. And that is the conversation that dealers got to start having with one another. You're right. I mean, my little bit more of my little frustration is that I get it that dealers are making more profit than they've ever had. And you know what? Good thing. I like it. I like that you are. I mean, you've worked hard, you deserve it. But that doesn't mean that you neglect accountability and processes that need your consideration to put in place to make a greater impact. What's going on with that? And why can't we do a better job with that? This is like the time now with volume not as crazy that, if I was the dealer, I'd be going, sign me up. Let's digitalize this whole thing. Let me go ahead, from the beginning to end. I don't want to see another piece of paper on my floor. I get it. I understand it. It just makes it so much easier. So when it picks up, they're ready to take off. So let's see what Stephen had to say. Timely content and critically valuable industry contributors. Yay, Erikka and Becky. There is so much to gain when we embrace new ideas and wider perspectives, especially when the result of successfully doing so has direct linkage to a more successful business. That's really what we're talking about. Bravo. The important work you both do and your voices do matter. Thank you. Stephen, always thank you so much for your input and your feedback, because, it's just a matter of thinking through the process. And, I tell you, I'm working on another topic and for another day, but, specifically as it pertains to, we have customers, let's face it, that do have slow pay derogatory credit. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So do I. So now we have dealers who have limited inventory on pre-owned too. Obviously, everything's ordered on new cars. So now they want to make full profit, gross profit on that pre-owned piece. So what do you think that they're doing when a customer comes in and perhaps maybe we don't have the right process in place? We end up putting the customer on the wrong car that they can't qualify for, payments that they can't afford, lender fees that are too high right now, interest rates that are higher, and blows the payment out of the water. What are they doing with that customer, you think?
Unfortunately, a lot of times the customer is getting blown out. They're getting sent to other dealerships. They're getting told we can't do anything for you here. Sadly enough, it happens sometimes from the salesperson, right? And there's an interesting dynamic. I had to talk to a finance manager I worked with years ago that stop calling your customers bogues. Stop calling them roaches. Stop calling them criminals, because what you're teaching the salesperson is that their customer doesn't matter and that their voice and that customer isn't worth anything. So the salesperson adapts this mentality that I'm going to not even bring the customer to you, because as soon as the customer tells me that I've been through a bankruptcy or I've had a repossession or I have slow credit pay, the salesperson is already quick to judge and have a bias that they know the finance manager or the sales manager is going to look at them and throw them out. And it's appalling and it's not okay. But we do this thinking it's funny. We create these toxic environments where it's friendly and laughing to talk about customers who have challenges instead of having empathy